Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. This is Bishop Bryan and I come to you today on October 2nd of 2015 for Vestiges of Christianity. This is test broadcast number 3 here on Spreaker as we continue to work out the growing pains of switching to a new platform and using new technology. So bear with me. Today we discuss the Kim Davis controversy. If you listen to this show with any regularity, you no doubt have heard about this issue in the news. It's a big issue for Christianity. It's very controversial within Christianity as well as without. So today we discuss it. How should a Christian respond to her position? Should we defend her? Should we refute her? And what is the genuine sacramental theology on the subject of matrimony? All this today on Vestiges of Christianity. Stay tuned. Well, I want to welcome all of you again to another edition of Vestiges of Christianity. And today we are going to be, of course, discussing this very controversial subject. And it's not something that's easy to discuss or talk about because there really is multiple views on it. And love her or hate her, she has done the Christian world a favor. And that is, it has exposed a serious I should say, a very serious problem with the United States government as it currently exists. Not that we are, not that this wasn't terribly obvious before. But I think with this particular issue, it is of tremendous importance and certainly something that Christians need to be discussing with some regularity because it is an important one. Now, hopefully my sound is good today. I know that there's been some static in previous test shows, so I'm trying to work out how this new technology works. So once again, I appreciate your patience as I continue to figure out what are the best settings for this broadcast, based on the current technology that I have available, the hardware and everything else. And I'm still improving it. I'm going to be purchasing a new soundboard soon. So hopefully we're going to get even better sound coming up in future weeks. And of course, the Eye of the Seer show will be returning here at Spreaker soon as well. It's just on hiatus, and I'm using Vestiges of Christianity as a good platform for testing out the show. Okay, so let's talk about this topic. All right, so for those of you who are living in a vacuum, Kim Davis is a county clerk with Rowan County, Kentucky. And what I didn't even realize when I first heard about this story, because I don't follow the news terribly closely, is that she is an elected official. So it's not like an employee of the state. She is somebody who has been sworn into office and cannot be fired. Would have to go through the processes of impeachment to get rid of somebody who is elected for doing something that would be violating the law, or which is clearly how the U.S. government interprets her actions. But basically what happened, in a nutshell, was that she issues marriage licenses for that county in the state of Kentucky. And after the Supreme Court ruled that people have a right, same-sex couples, I should say, have a right to marriage, and that no state can stand in the way of this right, then she decided that she was not going to issue marriage licenses anymore, citing that it violated her conscience to have her signature on the documents. So she stopped, from what I understand, she stopped giving licenses to anybody, whether they were same-sex couples seeking a marriage license or whether it was opposite-sex couples. So I guess you can argue that she was discriminating, which may have been a wise choice on her part, I suppose, but she stopped issuing marriage license altogether, which caused there to be some lawsuits filed against her from both homosexual couples and heterosexual couples. This led to, of course, her being arrested and even going to jail. She was released, I believe, 5 days later. But she was ordered, at several times that she would have to issue these licenses, whether she liked it or not. And that's the current standing. Of course, now there's new controversy with her. Of course, there's a lot of controversy with her. I mean, she's not exactly the greatest poster child for this cause. She has a bit of a questionable history with multiple marriages, and she's not the most well-spoken person on the planet, and that of course doesn't help the cause at all, and it just gives the media and gives the public more fuel to fight her with, but we need to keep in mind, well, her personal life should not be a consideration with this issue. Even I don't think there's a Christian on the planet that is living the Christian life perfectly. I know I'm not. So, and I'm a bishop. So I can guarantee you a Christian politician is most likely not either. So, but that doesn't mean that they don't have an obligation to continue to stand up for Christian principles within their lives. And that's what, in her mind, she saw herself as doing. The Pope met with her, which created, again, a new controversy. And then the Pope had some words that were somewhat vague, but it definitely could, be interpreted that there was some validation from the Vatican on her. Depends on how you look at it. Apparently, he said something to the effect of talking about there being a need, or that people have a right to conscientious objection. And I guess you could extrapolate from that it means that even if you are an elected official, you still have a right to protect your own religious convictions from the actions that you are required to take as a politician or as a sworn servant of the public. And this is where the contention point is for everybody. This is, I'm hearing it on both sides. I hear people saying that, she had a job to do. Do your job. I hear people say, don't put, you cannot put your personal convictions in the way of your duty. Your duty must come first. You leave your convictions at the door and proceed. It doesn't mean you have to agree with it. It's just what you are obligated to do. So there's that camp. And then there's the other camp that says that she had every right to do this. That the Supreme Court overstepped their boundaries this time. Whereas marriage was always something that was regulated by each state, that each state had the authority to regulate marriage as it saw fit, and now they were infringing upon the rights of individual states to regulate marriage the way they saw fit. And one could argue that Kim Davis came into office and was sworn in to protect what the state of Kentucky at the time understood marriage to be, until the Supreme Court, the federal government, comes in and overrules those positions. Which, one could say very clearly that she was sworn in under a different understanding than the one that eventually resulted. But did she have a right to stop issuing licenses because she didn't agree with it, or because her signature would be on it? Well, that's, however you want to look at that is up to you. I'm not going to argue one way or the other. I don't think she's the best person to be representing this cause, for one thing. Second of all, I think there is definitely a strong argument to say that if she really wanted to object to this, she should have resigned, and then continued to use her public persona to push her point of view, and just to do so outside of the operations of the law. But on the other side of the coin, just because something is law doesn't make it right. That's something that people, I think, take for granted, particularly in America, that the U.S. government will never make something law that is not right. And by right, I mean morally and ethically right. I have a huge moral problem with the United States government thinking it has the authority to define marriage, which is a sacred religious sacrament, a 4,000-year-old institution, no less. And I've heard people argue with me about this, saying, "Oh, but when the Jews created marriage, it was a contract, issued more by the state than it was never presided over by a religious office or by a rabbi." Or I've heard people argue that one and say that it's a secular institution. No, it is not. They forget that the Jewish world, at the time that marriage was formed into an institution that would serve to make a covenant with God, part of the covenant with God between husband and wife, male and female, they forget that that basically the Jewish world was a theocracy. There wasn't a difference between the law and the religion. In fact, even to this day, I mean, what does it mean to be Jewish? Is that a race? Is it a culture? Is it a religion? They're all three. So one cannot argue that just because it had more of a secularized function in the ancient Jewish world that now the government still has the right to decide what it is. No, and certainly for Christians, this is absolutely not true, because the Christian religion, particularly the oldest forms of it, Orthodoxy and Catholicism, have understood it to be a sacrament. It is a vehicle through which God's grace is tangibly received. And that, of course, means that only the church, or at least only religion, the religions that abide by marriage, who respect it and preserve those traditions, which is the entire Judeo-Christian world, even Islam, that they are the only ones that have the right to decide what it is. Not the U.S. government. So, the way I see it is that whether you like Kim Davis or whether you hate her, whether you think she did the right thing or whether you think she should have done her job or resigned, is irrelevant to the issue that's been exposed through this. And that is, I have a serious problem with any government that claims to have a separation of church and state that is ruling on a religious institution that would give a person who is a practicing Christian a moral dilemma if they are to continue to do their job and do it well. The United States government should not be ruling on a religious function. There would not be a problem here if they hadn't done that. But they want to continue to push a secularized agenda. And I hear people say, there's a war on Christianity. I don't believe there's a war on Christianity. I believe there's a war on religion. It doesn't matter what religion you practice. All right? There is a secularized agenda out there that is pushing their views in favor of this new world where religion just has become completely irrelevant. And don't argue with me that that's not true, because it's obvious. If you don't see it, then you're blind. You're blind as a bat. In fact, I would say a bat could see better than you do. It is definitely true. And this is part of that issue. And that's the main issue that's been exposed here. That's what people really should be paying attention to. Not this, whether or not she should have resigned. Okay? Good arguments can be made both ways. The Supreme Court argues the 14th Amendment on this one to the U.S. Constitution. And they're citing predominantly Section 1, where it states, all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States. Nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. So they're arguing that the laws of Kentucky were unconstitutional. And any state that did not promote or allow gay marriage was operating unconstitutionally. So those people who argue that she was within her rights because she was abiding by Kentucky law and that the Supreme Court overstepped its boundaries, that's not how the Supreme Court sees it. The Supreme Court says that every U.S. citizen has equal rights, and equal rights were being violated in this case. Problem is, the U.S. government sees marriage as a secularized or secular institution, when in fact it is a religious one to those who practice a Judeo-Christian or Islamic faith. And that's the problem. Neither side recognizes the other's view. That's the problem. So, how should the U.S. government respond it when they took a look at this and said, are these state laws unconstitutional or not? And said, okay, well, they are. So that means all states need to start issuing marriage licenses equally to all people, whether they are males and females, or females and females, and males and males. The proper way to address this under the separation of church and state would have been for the U.S. government to say it is against the law for the United States government to be issuing marriage licenses to begin with. Marriages are church business, not state business. For them to be making determinations as to what it is, for them to be defining what it is, for them to be issuing licenses in order to get it, is completely against separation of church and state. They're violating their own laws. The very act of issuing a marriage license, as I see it, is an illegal act. And that's what should be being challenged. Get rid of marriage licenses and let churches decide for themselves what marriage is. I'm sure there are plenty of liberal churches out there that would be more than happy to issue marriages and call it a sacrament to gay people. So there would be options. I'm not even against gay relationships. I know it probably sounds like I am because I am a strong supporter of traditional marriage as a sacrament, because I defend, as a bishop, I am obligated to defend sacramental theology and keep it consistent within the tradition of the church so that it doesn't become distorted, so that we can keep it pure as it has been for 4,000 years until everybody today starts going haywire with equal rights and, everybody's got to have a piece of the pie instead of forging their own. So ultimately what I think is that the government should be abolishing marriage licenses and just let churches decide for themselves how they want to handle it. You should not need a license to get married. That is ridiculous. And so they would say, well, what do you do about tax issues? Well, why not just allow everybody to declare one person in their household their partner, their tax partner? Doesn't even have to be whether or not they're intimate. It could just allow two people living in the same household to file jointly. And then problem solved. No license is required. But I know there's people that disagree with that position too. And, I don't have time in a half-hour broadcast to go into all of those details. But I do want to mention a little bit about the theology of marriage and understand, so that for those of you who think that the church is completely unfounded and is antiquated with this notion that a marriage can only be defined between a male and female, let's discuss a little bit about that before the end of the show. Well, first of all, the church fathers, okay? Weren't really big fans of marriage to begin with. They felt that celibacy was a far superior life. But then again, they were operating from the basis of an apocalyptic worldview, where the end times was near, and that Jesus was coming back soon, and that it was a waste of time to engage in any worldly pursuits, and falling in love and having children was just seen as sort of it's sort of like it would be something that would distract you from being able to pay all your attention to God. So why do it? But then again, the theology of marriage is that marriage is a gift. It was a gift from God to his people so that they could enter into a union, a spiritual union together. Now, the way the church looks at marriage and why it can't be redefined, okay, under any circumstances, no matter how old the church gets, it can never change it, is because marriage is not a state that we enter into. Marriage is a nature. Marriage has a nature, and we cannot redefine what constitutes a nature. Let me give you an example that I can't remember where I read this, but it's I think it was a Catholic bishop or a Catholic apologist, Roman Catholic, that stated this, and I liked it. If I can find the source, I will definitely cite it, but this is not from me. This is something from, I believe, a Roman Catholic apologist or bishop. And it stated that you can't redefine marriage any more than you can redefine the properties of water. All right, water is made up of hydrogen and oxygen molecules. You need both hydrogen and oxygen to make water. Science, chemistry cannot come in and say, okay, well, you know what? We're going to redefine water, and it's now going to be an oxygen and oxygen molecule, or it's going to be a hydrogen and hydrogen molecule. No, you change the chemistry, right? You change the natural property of that reality. The same goes for marriage. Marriage, as it is understood within the theology, requires the symbiosis of male and female for it to happen. And it's not conferred by the priest, at least not in the Western Rite. It is confirmed by the man and woman together. Their mutual love confirms it. But what is required is that marriage is created to make legal in God's eyes the creation of new life through having offspring. That's why the nature of marriage requires male and female. And you can argue with me about that, but if you want to argue with somebody, you're going to have to argue with Jesus. Because I see a lot of these crappy websites out there like Pathos and the Huffington Post. I mean, worthless news sites, okay, stating that, oh, the church doesn't really understand the theology, and they make up something. Some moron writes an article, and and then people start to believe it because they pass it around through social media, and nobody bothers to do the research. Nobody bothers to educate themselves in what is actually the teaching. So I'm going to give you the actual teaching of the church. And that comes right out of the Gospel according to Matthew, chapter 19, and starting at verse 4. Remember, the Pharisees were asking Jesus, is it lawful for a man to divorce his wife for any reason? They were always asking him questions about, trying to trip him up. And so this is what Jesus says. And he answered and said, have you not read that he who created them from the beginning made them male and female? And said, for this reason a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. So they are no longer two, but one flesh. What therefore God has joined together, let no man separate. Okay? Those are from the words of Jesus. And the church, of course, must abide by that theology, whether it likes it or not, whether the people like it or not. And I must teach it as a bishop, whether you like it or not. People want me because I'm sort of an innovative guy, and I'm sort of kind of on the edge. And, I challenge people to think outside the box, and I'm definitely one for, refreshing the church to make it relevant to today's times. But when it comes to sacramental theology, it is what it is. It's nature. And we cannot redefine it because it's not convenient for us. It's just like abortion. You have these people who have made it a woman's issue, a woman's rights issue. It's not a woman's rights issue. You can't justify murder just because you want to make it convenient and try to argue that it's the men out there who hate women making all the rules. And the church, of course, gets criticized for its positions on birth control and everything else. Same thing with this. They're trying to make it an equal rights issue. It's not about equal rights. It's about the reality of nature. And we must respect that as Christians, even if the secular world doesn't care. That's my position on this. I hope it gives you food for thought. Take care, everyone. And I'll see you next time on Vestiges of Christianity. This is Bishop Bryan Willett for the Holy Nicolean Catholic Church. Take care, all.